Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. You will see we have another array behind us here, and this one is something we have not done before. These are Enphase microinverters that are living underneath these panels. We've tied them in with a GivEnergy all-in-one, and I'm going to take you through the whole install because it is an interesting one. We've got an EV charger on here as well. We've had some great help from Mike from Eastern Renewables, just to give him a massive thank you for his assistance in this roof here. I'm going to show you how we've put this together. We'll have a little chat about the install itself. And if you've not already, please do remember to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It does help us massively in trying to grow what we are doing. And I want to start this video by talking a little bit about safety and working at height. So I'm going to spin you around and I'll show you the setup we've got here and some of the things we need to think about when we are coming up onto a roof space and lugging these great big panels around, because they are not lightweight and they do tend to act a bit like a sail. So I'll take you through this and show you some of the considerations we have in terms of safety. Okay, so first up is the scaffold system. You need to ensure you're working with a registered and reputable scaffolder who can put you in place a solid deck to work from. You should have a gate on your scaffolding system and good access to it. It's also important to have lifting equipment. So you see here we've got our little winch and a stand to lower and raise the panels and equipment up and down off the platform from. And we've got our edge protection as well up the side of this roof. We haven't actually been that close to the edges with this one, but even so, you want to be safe while you're working on here, so you need some edge protection. See, we've got that at each side. In terms of moving these around the roof space, there's a few ways of tackling it. Some people will use the suction cups and move these about between themselves, and other people will carry them with gloves and by the edges. And there's no real right or wrong way, it's just to make sure that you're using a safe system of work. These are not light, they're around 200 kilograms each. They're about 1.8 by 1.2 meters, roughly speaking. So they're a big old size, and ensuring that they're not going to blow about whilst you're up here, moving them around is really important. The roof pitch on this one, I think, is around 35 to 40 degrees. So it's a reasonable pitch up here, and they are difficult to shuffle around with. So safety is really important, and that's one of the prime considerations I have of somebody who is not comfortable at height. It's something that's always on my mind. I shared a video on my channel where we did our roof on my shed in my garden, and I didn't use edge protection on that because we'd helped building it, and we didn't really use a scaffold at those stages, and I considered it a DIY process. However, that doesn't mean that's the right thing that I should have done, but on every work project we are belts and braces. It's just not worth the risk, and it's always a case of following the risk assessment method statement unique to your installation. There won't be two, well, obviously a lot of these are quite similar, but there won't be two jobs that are the same. There may be different risk protocols. People could be using rope task access. You know, it's no two jobs are the same basically. Another important thing is your tethered tools. So when you are up on these roof spaces, obviously it's a long way down. You don't want to be dropping tools, bits of equipment. So we use the little flexible buckets, put all of our clamps, such as these, into them, tools as well, and then we're moving them around. They're tethered off and they can't fall to the ground because you don't want to be injuring any people who may be walking underneath the scaffold. Anyway, let's have a look at what we've actually got here, and I'll show you some footage of how we put it all together. So up on the roof, these are the 440 watt Jinko panels, and there's 12 of them in all black. They look the absolute business, I've got to say. The guys have done a cracking job, and again, thanks to Matthew, Nathan and Mike on this one. These are on Renyasol, and that was because I used Midsummer for the order of the Enphase microinverters, and I wanted to get the whole package as one from them. Point of note is the T-bolts that they sent to hold the optimizers were actually too long, so if you are ordering those, something to think about is making sure you get the right size T-bolts. Made a small mistake there in the order myself, but then Easy PV built the basket. Software's fault. But yeah, Renyasol, really good mounting system. Had that recommended to me by Stuart Cater, and it's come up an absolute treat on this one. 12 panels. The microinverters underneath, I'll show you some footage of that, of them being installed, but they are the Enphase. I think the 360 watts AC output from each microinverter. And they do work a little bit different to the DC system side of things. So these are all AC on the roof. It's obviously AC going down to the gateway. We'll have a look inside at how that is set up. In essence, I think the upside to Enphase is they start generating a little bit earlier in the morning and they work a little bit better in low light conditions. So where you might have some clipping in the peak of summer, you're going to see better generation according to the literature from Enphase through the course of a year with your overall generation in the UK. And there is some huge safety benefits as well. We had a suggested failure rate of 1 in 10,000 on these microinverters. I think it was 1 in 2,000 was what they were marketing before, but Tom Wilson from Enphase came down and did a really good training day on these, and he said it's now 1 in 10,000-ish, yet to be officially announced, so that's really cool. And yeah, that's up on the roof. You'll see the guys have also got the usual bird guard, which has been installed beautifully. As you'll see, nice straight lines all the way along and all the way around. And yeah, that's the roof space. We'll jump down. Like I said, I will clip in some footage of how this got put together and talk over that as well. But just to give you a look at these, so these are now 440 watts times 12. You've roughly got just over 5 kilowatts of peak generation, and these are serving the customer very nicely. It's been on over the weekend and they've pumped out some good numbers. See, it's quite sunny. But let's go look inside and see how this is actually set up. So you see we've got another all-in-one here, AC isolator over the side, 13.5 kilowatts of storage, 6 kilowatts output. These are absolute beasts. You'll have seen me talking about these a lot on the channel before already. So we don't need to go over that, but we will have a look at why this has ended up in an indoor environment and explain a little bit around the choices of that. But just to say, that's kind of there to collect all that solar energy, also be there for any off-grid applications, because this will output 6 kilowatts in an off-grid state and keep your PV running. Loads of videos around the all-in-one on the channel already, so go and check those out if you want to learn a little bit more about these. There's another part of the jigsaw with this, and that's the gateway, so let's go and take a look at that. So you can see we've got our gateway and we've still got a bit of patching up to do and enclosing of cables, so don't hate on that for the minute. They just dropped in so we could get this commissioned. But this is like the brains of the operation, if you like, where all of the connected devices come into. So we have our grid feed coming from the meter cabinet to this, got our load out to the consumer unit. We have a double pole bidirectional type A Proteus RCBO for the EV charger. We've then got our PV circuit, which is running off to a sub board for the Enphase microinverters, and we'll speak about that in a little bit as well. And then we've got our all-in-one circuit, which runs over to the all-in-one. So in an off-grid state, this stays running, keeps the all-in-one and PV going. You can also charge your electric vehicle if you wish to do so. Shouldn't really need to do that, but if you ever wanted to, the option is there. And then when it's all connected in an eco mode state, it makes best use of the solar generation, battery storage and electric vehicle to use the system at large. So we'll go out and have a look at the EV charger.
So we had a little bit of a technical malfunction on site with the microphones, and I didn't realise it had gone flat. So all of this audio is lost, and I'm going to voice over basically what I was talking about. This is the EV charger that we've popped outside, and that goes directly back to the gateway. It's on that 6mm circuit running off from the gateway through the RCBO out to this charge point, and we've also dropped a data cable into it as well. It was originally put on Wi-Fi, but we had a few little dropouts and we was worried that that could cause a problem. So alongside the customer, we decided to pop a data cable in. And while I mentioned the customer, massive shout out to Stu, who looked after us so well. We are really lucky with our customers. We've been on a right roll, and Stu did not let us down with some fantastic lunches, lots of drinks, and just kindness. It makes a massive difference when you are working in people's homes to have customers who are happy to have you there and want to work with you and look after you. So thank you very much, Stu. Me and all the guys massively appreciate it. So this EV charger is on the CloudSync, it's mode D. I've shared videos on how these are installed before, so if you want to see that, please do check back on the channel to see how that comes together. But in essence, it works with the all-in-one system to best use that stored energy. So you can prevent the battery from discharging to the vehicle. You can also use the solar to be sent directly to the vehicle in preference to the battery, or the other way around, and allocate scheduled charging slots. There is also a link up coming with energy providers that GivEnergy are working on. I don't think any of the manufacturers or electric suppliers have got that totally nailed down, but it is something that is improving week to week. And I just want to mention about these EV charge points and some of the quality in terms of installation that energy providers are doing. We've seen the social media posts, they are out there with these outdoor consumer units and other ropey installation practices, shall we say. and the aggressive pricing of those. We find a lot of consumers coming to us where an energy provider's quoted for an EV charge point installation and then realised it's too complex and difficult within their rigid frameworks they have to work in. So then they're kind of contacting us, typically when the cable routes are difficult. And it's the same for solar PV and battery storage. If you've got a slate roof, lots of them won't touch it, and they're just looking for those easy wins. It is really frustrating for us as electricians when companies like that are trying to get into that marketplace. I accept they want to disrupt it, they're trying to draw new consumers into their own business, but it shouldn't affect quality. We shouldn't be doing things to reduce to the lowest common denominator, and some consumers are just focused in on price. So it is a big frustration. Something we try to offer as a business is value, safety, and quality. And I'm not sure you get that in other places. I've had videos from the past around some of the manufacturers of EV charging equipment when they were actively pushing their installation teams, where I think they had prices from like 600 quid. I think there's a video on this channel actually where one of them hit the main service cable and a water pipe a few times that we had to go and sort out. So these things are not without problems. And if you are a consumer, I would say to reach out to a local installer or somebody who is familiar with this stuff and does it for a living day to day. If you've got any problems, you'll generally be dealing with them at a technical level. So if there's issues down the road after the installation and you want some technical support, you'll get that rather than a call centre. They're generally more switched on in wanting to do a good quality job for you as well. And while it is really easy to click a button on your portal with an energy provider for a quote for EVs, PVs, heat pumps, sometimes that doesn't give you the best value. Take a look on social media. Some of the installs these companies are doing are out there for all to see. And we stand behind everything we do, hence sharing the videos on YouTube. So we're looking at the outdoor location now for the battery system. I forgot to mention in the voiced over segment down the side of where the car's parked that it's a shared driveway. So there's access to both properties side to side with the shared drive. It didn't sit right fitting the battery storage down there, and equally would need the crash protection, would make it very difficult to park the vehicle. You've got the doors and windows on the front. There's a window in the middle of the wall on the side with not enough space either side of it to fit the battery and comply with the pass. And it's the same in the back garden as well. So really, if we're following that to the letter and not siting these near windows and doors, it ruled out most of the outdoor locations by default, and we've ended up where we are. So again, you can see in the back garden, we've got the window and the gate leading to that shared driveway and then space between the door and the window. There isn't anywhere again to get a meter away from any of those and site it outdoors. There is no space in the garden for anything because of all the plants and the sheds and other bits and pieces that are going on. The customer was also concerned about the cold temperatures in winter affecting all of this. And this is the challenge we're now going to face as installers, and we need to remember that the PAS does not exclude the use of indoor spaces. It just puts certain things into place if you are going to use them. Unfortunately, as a new build, this has all of the required smoke detection in the property already, so we didn't have to worry about that one, but it's something to keep in mind if you are going to use an indoor location. Lofts, bedrooms, under the stairs is all off the table, and where you are siting it, you need to make sure you have got the appropriate smoke detection in place. But it is really difficult. That driveway looked like such an easy win, but when you consider the neighbour and the vehicles, not so much. So we'll have an interesting look at the consumer unit that was installed as new build. The occupier moved into this a month ago. It's about as new as you can get, but you'll see there it's a split load board. There wasn't an SPD in sight, and it's just a bit disappointing when you consider the cost of these that they can't factor in some RCBOs and SPDs. Despite the get out that it was designed to a prior version of the regulations, it seems like scrimping for the sake of it, when this could be very easily a lot better. In terms of the SPD, we don't need to worry because the gateway has one in, so we're covering that off as part of our install. We're not interfering with any of this, installing the AC coupled battery and PV system, so it can stay as is. It's just frustrating. Luckily, the meter cabinet was in good order because that's also a usual failure point on new build, but let's move on. So the guys also popped in some data points for this customer. They've moved into the new build. They wanted some access points in the bedrooms, and we've managed to take these from the front room using a bit of trunking to squeeze up one of the stud walls into the underfloor upstairs, over into the loft, and then managed to drop down into the bedrooms without causing too much damage. Obviously it's freshly plastered, and we're trying to do this in the least destructive way possible, but it's always difficult getting from A to B. You can see the main media plate in the front room with the router local to that, so we've managed to punch through into that cupboard and then up into the floor voids, giving those 3 data cable points throughout the building. And we've made use of one of those for our equipment as well. So this is the other end of the PV submain. So from the gateway, we've taken that PV circuit out to this M2 consume unit, and that's so we can split the Enphase strings. You were limited to 20 amps of your overcurrent protected device on an Enphase string, so we couldn't put them directly into the gateway. They needed something pre that. And with the Enphase string arrangements, you're kind of limited depending on what panels you're using and what version of optimizer, from between 8 and 11 panels per string. We've opted for a string of 6 panels times 2, and they run into this little M2 consumer unit on B20 breakers. And then the Enphase gateway also takes power from that board on a little B6 circuit. That has the CT running back to the grid in the gateway, so it can see what's going on in terms of energy coming in and out on the grid, and also a CT up into that little consumer unit just above it to monitor the generation coming off the roof. And that's the combined generation of both of those strings. And this gateway then sits on the internet and will do its magic stuff in terms of monitoring what the panels are doing at an individual level. And we'll have a look at that later on in this video. When I talk through the system more widely, you can see we've got a little adaptable box there, and that's just where we've broken out to take our EV circuit through that wall, and that drops straight down into the charge point that you've seen earlier on from there. So that's the 6mm feed coming off the gateway straight through that box and out the wall to the charge point. Nice and simple. So there are always a few incisions in the building you need to make to get your cables from A to B, but again, we've tried to limit it. These new build floors were glued and nailed down so well. Full credit to them, because we often find that isn't the case, but these were put down really well, and getting them up was an absolute pig, so we've had to cut a nice big access hole. But fortunately, that gave us access from above the consumer unit, which is kind of on the left-hand side of the image there. The consumer unit's directly underneath. And then the all-in-one runs off to the other side of the building, where we've made an access hole and managed to fish through, which was super handy. So we've been able to run our cables without dragging too much of that floor up. And just behind that socket you can see there is a bathroom, and in that bathroom is a stench pipe that runs up into the loft, and there is a really big void just in there. So we've been able to take our data cables up that void into the loft and ensure we can get those to the bedrooms where they're needed. We've also utilised that route for taking our AC cable up over the top through the loft and then down into the airing cupboard where the Enphase distribution board lives. So we've managed to avoid too much destruction. Where the all-in-one lives, we've had to make a couple of little holes, and these were really to drop in the AC feeds down to the isolator. There was noggins in the wall, so it was just a case of trying to get past those as best we can and not causing too much damage. You can see we obviously need the local AC isolation point, so we've got that in place if anyone comes to work on that. And we've kept the AC side of things separate to the datacomms into the inverter as well, so we haven't got those two cabling systems sharing the same space. And that's why we've got the two access holes. Once these are sanded down and given a top fill, they will disappear. It's easier, I think, if you use easy fill on these, and then you get a nicer finish rather than trying to put bonding in and a skim on top. If these were older walls, that would be the preferred method, but in this case, it works really well.
So I wanted to show the roof on this one from a distance. You can see we are a good gap off the top and the bottom. I think it's about 350. All of a sudden it's sat right in the middle. It looks like absolute business. Obviously the scaffolding is still in the way, but once that's down, this is going to be immense and generate the customer a lot of power for many, many years to come. Huge credit again to Mike from Easton for helping Matty and Nathan. Done a cracking job, and we're going to be working with Mike on other projects very soon as well. Extends. Extender. Down. Go side. Still there. So when you back the conjugate, hello, and that's it. Okay, rather annoyingly, on the time-lapse recording I was doing of that, went flat. However, the conjugate disc is down there, 600mm hole, a bit of conjugate underneath the disc, the sealing compound goes on top of your terminal, we've got a bit of flexicon in there bringing our cable across, and then we've just run it up the back of the hockey stick. I didn't want to go interfering with inside that, and it's keeping it neat on the wall. And then we're up into the earthing terminal on the service head. We've got that in there nice and neat, and then obviously the earth running off, if you can see that in the light, earth running off into inside. Fortunately we've got a nice tails isolator, new build, one of the plus signs, and no funky made off steel wire armour in this one. Consumer unit is just the other side of the wall, so that's handy. Then backfilled, obviously we've got quite a lot of soil out of the hole because we've basically added a bag of conjugate into the hole, so we've got that to bag up and get rid of. But otherwise that doesn't look too bad, and it serves the purpose. We measured 38 ohms, which is decent enough. The earthing services calculation did say, I think, to get under 10 ohms we needed a couple of conjugate discs, but I'm comfortable at that value. It is more of just a reference for the islanding mode system, and it's going to be significantly better than we would have achieved with an earth rod. We didn't want to go driving the rod in here because we've got gas over there, we've got electric here, the water crosses from here as well. It is littered with services and drains, telecoms too. We did the safe digging survey and it basically just said nothing round here. So we've gone in by hand, nice and easy with a shovel, drop down basically to the level of the footing, 600mm, and then drop the conjugate disc in. Bit of conjugate underneath, bit of conjugate on top. And then away we go. Nice, easy, safe solution. So thumbs up to earthing services and the conjugate. Just to take you through the instructions on this, I did run through this once already, pre-realising I'd gone flat. But you can see it says to dig a trench, 1/2 metre wide, 600mm deep, to the desired length, smooth out the bottom, lay the copper wire in the centre of the trench, or in this case, your conjugate, cover it in conjugate to 4 centimetres, hand shovel or loose backfill over conjugate and compact, and then chuck your other stuff on the top. If you're going in vertical, so say with an earth rod or whatever, drill a hole, design depth and diameter, place it in the centre of the hole, conjugate either side in slurry form, and backfill to the top of the hole. So easy enough, and if you can read French and Spanish and all that lot, it's in there as well. That's nice and easy, and tidy up now. So I'm not sure how this little segment's going to work, because I'm going to show you the micro inverter has been fitted on the roof. That should start to go behind me if I've done this right on the video edit. If not, it may follow on from this, but we'll give it a go. And I'm going to screen record having a look through the data sheet of these Enphase micro inverters just to explain how they work, because I've never fitted these before. Matty's done the training on it for us, and really I only know what Tom Wilson from Enphase told us the day he came down. So he spent a good probably 6-7 hours with us alongside Mike from Easton, running through how these get installed onto the roof. The micro inverters live underneath the solar panels, and then also some of the considerations we need in how these get strung together and then monitored in the gateway. So huge thanks to Tom and Enphase for doing that. My first impressions of them are they do seem really switched on to help their installers. The online portal and the training they've got is really good. The video content and the courses that they're offering as well, excellent, and the product reviews and feedback that I've had have been really good as well. But looking through the app as well, this should come up onto screen so you guys can see it as I read through it. But there's basically 3 different versions of this now. It's on the IQ8 range. So there's the MC, the AC and the HC, and the difference in those seems to be the power of the solar panel that you can connect into them, so your maximum input power. So with the MC, your maximum input power is 480 watts, the AC is 530 and the HC is 560. So obviously you're working with those larger panels, you're going to need one of the bigger, essentially, inverters. They all are pretty similar specified outside of that, so you can have minimum maximum voltage inputs of 18 to 60 volts. The startup input voltage is only 22 volts, which is super duper low, and that's the superpower of the Enphase system. Let's get the sunlight out of that because it's probably making the video go all funny. And then we've got the rated input voltage. So we've got 35, 36.5 and 37, so some subtle difference there as well. We've got the minimum and maximum MPPT voltage, I guess, and that's 25 to 45, 28 to 45 and 29.5 to 45. So again, little subtle differences there. Minimum and maximum operating voltage is the same across the lot from 18 to 49 volts. And for most of your panels, that's going to be absolutely fine. And then you've got your maximum input current of 14 amps. And as these panels are getting bigger and more powerful, that may need to be revised in the future. We're seeing that with some of the string inverters already. Your maximum short circuit DC input current is 25 amps. Maximum apparent power, so this is your usable power if you like, and this is where the Enphase system varies from somehow the data is presented in your string inverters, for example. On the smaller option, it's 330 VA, 366 and then 384. So again, scaling up in the size. The rated power is 325 watts, 360 watts and 380 watts. And just remember that that's ACR, not your DC power off the panels themselves. Nominal grid voltage is 230 volts. The maximum grid voltage is 276 volts, minimum 184. So that's above and below the scale of the UK grid, but obviously these are worldwide products. Maximum output current is, maximum output current, and this is your AC variety, not to be confused with the DC, is 1.43, 1.59 and 1.67. They're 50 hertz, and the maximum in that is 45 and 55. You wouldn't want it wandering that far, but can do. Maximum units per single multi-phase 20 amp circuit. So the advice on these is that you take them back to a 20 amp overcurrent protected device for each of your strings, which is obviously going to be a limiting factor in terms of your cable sizes, and the number of these things that you can string together isn't quite as vast as something like Solar Edge, for example. So if we have a look at this here, you can have 11 panels. This is based on a certain set of criteria, obviously. So they're saying for an IQ cable of 2.5 mil stranded conductors, using a safety factor of 1.25, 16 amp per phase is calculated as the maximum current according to IEC 60364. Safety factors applied may vary based on local regulations or best practices, also upon the characteristics of the overcurrent protected supply. So that's basically passing the design back to you as the installer, but they're giving some clear guidance here. So for the MC, so the smaller version, if you like, for want of a better description, you can have 11 panels, next size up 10 panels, and the size above that 9 panels. So you're scaling back the number of panels. And then if we go in for the maximum units per single multi-phase IQ cable selection, and this is centre feeding is the best practice. So that's where you bring in a centre feed up and splitting out. These design limits should ensure voltage rise and line conductor resistance to the IQ cable are maintained at acceptable limits. So they're telling you in that case, drop the size of your string to 8 panels across all 3 sizes. And we've got 2 strings up on our roof here, and they have 6 panels on each one. So we're well within that safety margin, but just to make you aware of that, you cannot go beyond a set number of panels with these because of the way the AC system is distributed, the power back to the wider installation. So you do need to factor that in with these. You've then got all of the clever techie stuff in there around your total harmonic distortion, your power factor, your efficiency settings and such as well. I don't think there's anything else that's really interesting to look at in here. Obviously there's the layout, and these were released in September 2023. So they're a relatively new product. We'll stop that screen recording. And you can see there with our 6 panels, if you like, so we've got 6 times 440 watt DC going into these 6 microinverters under each of those panels. So if you imagine them like an optimizer on a DC string, but rather than sending that DC power back to a string inverter, they are converting it to AC energy on the roof and then distributing that back to the AC system directly off the roof space. Now, our customer wanted the Enphase system. They were the ones who requested it. That's why we've gone through the training and put this into our installation offering, because they were wanting less hardware. They were limited on space. There's no garage on this one. We're already struggling for room with the equipment in that airing cupboard as it is. We certainly wouldn't have fitted an inverter in there. Didn't want to put one in the loft. So it was a good solution to the problem. All of the inverters are taken out of the equation and put under the panels. Obviously there's the issue of access to them and maintenance, but if you're fitting optimizers anyway, it's the same sort of principle, and Enphase are super confident in the reliability of their product. 1 in 20,000 are going wrong. Nothing is foolproof, obviously. However, it's one of those where this was the best solution for this installation, and that's going to be the case based on different homes around the UK. There'll be certain terraced homes where you're not going to have room for hardware such as inverters and things, and a small little gateway which isn't actually housing anything switching mechanical that needs access really. It's a lot easier to install on that basis. Now, complying with the regulations with these things is where it gets a little bit tricky, because we do know we need a point of DC isolation on all of our DC cabling. I've gone on about this before in advance of our string inverters, where we have those points of DC isolation so we can change those inverters without live energy in place. Now, obviously fitting DC isolators under each panel seems a little bit stupid, to be fair. However, technically to the regs, if we're not classing those MC4 connectors as a reliable means of DC isolation, should it really be there? I think that's where when we're pushing the intent of regulations beyond what's sensible. Common sense has to play a part in all of this, I would say, and having a string of maybe 400 to 600 volts, you definitely want some isolation within it before you start dismantling your MC4 connectors. But taking them out of a singular Enphase inverter up on the roof, where you've only really got the 50 volts maximum-ish out of the panel, more like 35 to 40 volts, the danger there is much lower. So I think that's where it becomes less of a factor. But let me know what you think in the comments on that. I've gone on about these DC isolators for the string inverters for a long time, because I think they're super duper important in terms of maintenance and safety. But when we are kind of at a singular panel level, I don't think it's such a big factor, certainly when we're under 50 volts DC. But that's just how they work. So just to explain that from a consumer's point of view, the actual inverter lives under the panels. Instead of having one central inverter converting all that DC power to usable AC energy, they are on a singular panel by panel basis, converting that DC power to AC and then distributing it back to the grid. The app itself, which I will also show you, do a screen recording and voiceover of, is really insightful, where it can show you on a panel by panel basis what each one is generating. So if you know you've got particular issues of shading from a chimney, you may see that in the data. And it can guide you if you're going to have a fault on a panel, for example. I don't know, say kids in the street have booted a football up onto your panels and you notice a bit of a drop off on one of them. There's a good chance you've noticed some damage to it and you'd want to get some repair action. Or equally, if a product's failing, you can see it in the data. So it's really useful. The Enphase app from an installer's point of view and a consumer's looks absolutely brilliant, but we'll have a look at that in a voiceover for it. I won't chat about it all right now, but super duper interesting how those work. Matty and Nathan really rated it. I think Mike enjoyed the training day as well with Tom when he came out and saw us. And yeah, really, really good stuff. I think we'll be installing a lot more of these going forward. And the cost difference is negligible really when you factor in the price of an optimizer in a DC system, the saving on not having a central inverter, and you pop all of that into the cost of these individual microinverters, it's there or thereabouts, to be honest. So there's no real difference on that. It's just your view on distributing AC around a roof. I've always been against it, but logically, and I said this to Tom Wilson from Enphase, I don't understand why, because we distribute AC everywhere else around the house. I think it's just a force of habit, I suppose. We're used to something and we don't like deviating away from it. And I can't really think of any sensible reason why it wouldn't be okay. You've also got the default bonding of all the rails through the microinverters themselves, and with the bond that you take up there, so you're covering that aspect off as well. And yeah, keep looking up there because that's where it's all living. We'll move on with the video.
So these are the Enphase optimizers on the rail, and you'll see they come with the portrait linking cables. You can get the landscape linking cables as well, but as our panels are portrait, we've gone for that option. And they bolt straight onto the rail. Here's Mike from Eastern Renewables, and he's busy popping these Jinko panels on for us. The DC cables just link straight into those optimizers, and there is limited DC cabling up on the roof. So you can see they're bolted onto the rail with cable tied up, all those linking cables, and we're making sure we're leaving a nice, neat job up there on the roof. Nathan's jumped up to have a little go now and having a look through connecting into those microinverters. Actually makes the process, I think, of wiring your DC cables on the roof a little bit easier. And also we have the safety benefits and performance benefits Enphase brings. So I thought it might be interesting to have a little look at the Enphase Portal. There is an app for this as well. However, you get a little bit more detail and it's easier to display on the video looking at it on the web portal. So you can see here, this is the array on the roof. So we've got our 12 panels, and this is kind of what they've all been doing over the course of the day. You can see currently it's produced 16.1 kilowatt hours. Now, if we click on an individual panel, you can bring up its signal strength and its serial number, and you can also then track what it's actually been up to. So if you look here, it's kind of been sat on the 16th of June at around about a peak of 324 watts, average real power, and then the same you can see through the course of the next day. So you're getting an insight as to what that is doing on a day-to-day basis. Its maximum that it's produced is 344 watts. We can download that as a picture, you can export it and review that data later on should you wish. Now, if we go back into the actual panels themselves, you can see for other panels as well if they've been behaving in a similar way or not. So if we go back to the full system view, and you can see here they kind of have all tracked in a similar way. The orientation of the roof is kind of just off south, so you would expect some slight variation. There isn't a great deal of shading. There's a little bit potentially on the horizon first thing in the morning as it comes off a construction site that's just to one side, which is maybe why we're seeing a little better performance over on the left-hand side of the roof as you look at it, as opposed to the right-hand side. So it's just an interesting observation. You can also have some graphs populate for your import and export. You can generate reports. You can see a full list of all of your devices and other such things as that. I don't want to delve too much into all of the data because I'm aware that there is some customer information within this as well, and I don't want to share that. But it's just to give you a kind of view of what you can do with that. It is compatible with Home Assistant, so if you're wanting to look at that as well, you can. And just to pick another panel out of the list, so this one from the bottom row, again, if we want to go into the graphs, we can do that and have a little look at how this panel's been performing as well. And the good news is that it's been doing consistent across all the panels. So it gives you confidence that your array is performing correctly. And obviously, if one of these panels was to become dirty or dusty and you were having a problem with it, it would be evident in the data. So if we have a little look at what it did perhaps yesterday, so you can see here again, we're getting slightly better performance over on this left-hand side of the array, and that will be due to that shading that we mentioned about in the morning. If we have a look at the past 7 days, it gives you a bit more insight. So you can see they're all there or thereabouts with each other, but this bottom corner here is a little bit more shaded than perhaps over at this top left corner. And we'll see how that performs over the fullness of time. As the sun adjusts its position in the sky, the days get longer and shorter. That may vary as other obstacles pop up on the horizon in terms of shading in the winter months. And also you've got different cloud coverage and such going on as well. But I don't know, say a bird managed to fly up and drop a great big rock on this panel, or the inverter and optimizer failed, you may see that drop down where the rest of all these are sort of sat between 8.5. This could be down at 4. And that would give you a good indication. We might want to look at this panel. It could just be dirt. It could be a problem with the optimizer itself. Who knows? But at least you've got insight to that level. And all the data is in the app as well. So if you want to see the microinverter's serial number, its position on the roof, it's all laid out and you've got full access to it through the gateway. Super duper useful. I thought we'd have a little look at the ServiceMate features on this as well, in particular the asset tagging. So if you've not used this before, you can get some asset tags and you can apply them onto your equipment, a little QR code. And then when you scan those codes, it will allow you to create a reference in a job. So in this case, I am using it to have asset codes for the all-in-one, the gateway, any of the consumer units and switch gear. You can put the location, the serial numbers, the picture of internals if you wish, the location of it, the date it went in, and the condition it was left in. This is really useful if you are doing bigger facilities management projects and you've got EICRs, for example, you've installed distribution boards and you want evidence of that and the condition you left it in and what it was like when you inspected it. The QR codes are really good for that. Same if any operatives are out on site and they see a piece of equipment like this they're working on, they can scan the QR code and be taken straight away to all the prior work on that product. Consumers can report issues and faults with it as well. If they've got a problem, they can scan that and send it back in to you to review. So you can see we've got one on the Enphase gateway that we've popped on there as well, and we can use that to reference the serial numbers and all of that other good stuff, a picture of the product as well, because that often speaks 1,000 words. And you can literally apply these to anything you want. They're not expensive to buy, the QR codes, they are a separate purchase in the ServiceMate package. However, I bought a reel of them a while ago and we're still going strong, but it does depend on how far you want to take it. Obviously, you don't want to be applying these to every light switch and socket outlet, but for the main components of a system, it makes a lot of sense. You can also record ongoing maintenance and it helps with your MCS register.
So I hope you've enjoyed that video. I'm running through this. If you are a consumer and you're wanting a proposal for a solar PV battery storage EV charge point, please do get in touch. We try and respond to everyone super quickly, and we do get a lot of inquiries from YouTube. So if you are interested, please do get in touch. Link in the description, www.powersonic.co. We've got examples on all kinds of equipment we've installed. We're really transparent and everything we do is based on quality, value and safety. So we've got some firm principles we stick to. We're not just looking to take your money and tie you into a long-term energy tariff and not care about the quality and safety of what we are doing day to day. So get in touch. Outside of that, the GivEnergy installer app, so I've been brought into the beta testing of that, and I couldn't use it on this install because it wouldn't let me create the customer's account, frustratingly, because it's a new build and the postcode essentially doesn't exist in any databases yet. I think it was due to that, maybe user error on my part, but there is a GivEnergy installer app coming. So those of you who have the complaints and struggles around commissioning with not just GivEnergy but all of these products, they are a bit of a pain to get them online and working. Lots of the manufacturers, and GivEnergy in particular, are really focused on helping us with that, and it's supposed to save hours through the commissioning with this GivEnergy app. I'm excited to actually try it. We've got some more installs later this week for GivEnergy, so I'm hoping I can demonstrate that and show you what's coming. If I'm allowed to share it, we shall see. But also just to try it myself and give some feedback on it. I've made a few notes here because I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Just the wider new build stuff, I suppose. It's always disappointing when you come to these places and you see that things aren't done how the regulations dictate they should be done in today's world. But more widely speaking, the install on this new build wasn't bad. I've got to say, they had cable protectors everywhere. They'd gone through timbers. It was all marked out where the cable and pipe routes were. Everything had been clipped. It looked neat and tidy. The dressing of cables wasn't horrendous. So just to say, the quality of installation work seemed all right. It's just the selection of equipment, and it seemed a bit like penny pinching for the sake of penny pinching, to be honest. And I think we could do a lot better, and these house builders and developers would do well to give more credit to the changes we make in regulations and the reasons for those changes, and look to implement them a little bit more quickly than once every decade, perhaps. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and get your comments in below. I'll see you on the next one.